He had everything the world says you should want: money, influence, a future written in gold. Then he walked into a small bookstore by the river, and everything unraveled. This is the story of the billionaire who turned down power, chose love instead, and discovered that the most dangerous thing he ever did was follow his heart. Before we get into the juicy details of this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more romantic stories. Everyone assumed Adrian Vale wanted more, another acquisition, another skyline etched with his name. He moved through the world with the calm certainty of someone used to doors opening before he reached them. Power followed him like a well-trained dog. Then he met Lara Bloom. She wasn't impressed by private jets or boardrooms that hummed with reverence. She ran a little bookstore by the river, the kind with creaky floors and a bell that rang like a promise. Adrian wandered in one afternoon to escape a meeting that felt louder than it needed to be. Lara looked up from a stack of paperbacks and smiled as if she'd been expecting him, not because he was important, but because he was human. They talked about stories, about how endings mattered less than the way characters learned to listen. Adrian found himself lingering, returning, learning the rhythm of her days, the morning tea she forgot to drink, the way she underlined favorite sentences in pencil, the quiet joy she took in recommending the perfect book to a stranger. When he invited her to dinner, she suggested the riverside bench instead. When he offered a weekend abroad, she chose a long walk and warm bread shared between laughs. With Lara, Adrian felt the unfamiliar relief of not performing. The world, of course, kept knocking. An opportunity rose, one that would crown him with influence beyond money. It required a move, a speech, a promise to prioritize power the way he always had. Adrian stood on the bookstore's threshold at dusk, watching Lara lock up, her hair catching the last light like a secret. "I have a choice," he said, voice softer than he'd ever allowed in a negotiation. She listened. She always did. That night, he declined the offer, not with a grand announcement, but with a simple sentence that felt like breathing for the first time. The next morning, he brought coffee to the shop and a ring he hadn't planned, his hands steadier than his heart. Lara laughed, surprised and luminous. She reached for him, and the bell above the door rang. Adrian turned, smile still forming, as a familiar voice spoke his name. Adrian's smile faltered for the briefest second. The voice was smooth, measured, and unmistakable. Lara Bloom? He turned fully. Standing there was a woman in a sharp navy suit, hair perfectly styled, eyes glinting with purpose. Not the kind of purpose that belonged in a bookstore, but the kind that belonged in boardrooms and headlines. "Can I help you?" Lara asked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, curious but unafraid. The woman's gaze flicked to Adrian and then back to Lara. "I need to speak with Mr. Vale," she said. Her tone carried neither threat nor malice, just inevitability. Adrian took a slow breath. "I'm Adrian Vale," he said, stepping forward. "And this is my life now." Lara's hand brushed his. "Your life?" she asked, a playful note in her voice. "Yes," he whispered, as if saying it louder might break the spell. "I chose this, chose us." The woman's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Then I suppose you'll want to hear why the world is knocking now." Lara's brows rose. Adrian glanced at her, feeling the pulse of shared laughter and quiet mornings, the simple life he had chosen, clash against the sudden weight of the unexpected. He nodded once. "Go on." And just like that, the cozy riverbank, the smell of old paper and coffee, and the warmth between them was poised on the edge of something new, something that promised change, and maybe even more choices. The bell rang again, as if signaling not the end, but the beginning. The woman introduced herself as Mara Lynn, and instead of sitting, she wandered the bookstore as if browsing memories rather than shelves. Her fingers skimmed spines, pausing now and then with appreciation. "You've built something rare here," she said to Lara. "A place people don't want to leave." Lara smiled. "That's kind of the point." Mara nodded, then turned to Adrian. "The board accepted your refusal. Publicly." She let the word hang, gently but deliberately. "Privately," she continued. "They were inspired." Adrian blinked. Inspired isn't usually their reaction to no. True, Mara said. But you reminded them of something they'd forgotten. That influence doesn't only come from authority. Sometimes it comes from example. Elara leaned against the counter, intrigued now. You're saying his walking away mattered? It did, Mara replied. Enough that they've asked for something different. Not power. Partnership. Adrian felt Elara's eyes on him, searching, warm, steady. He took her hand without thinking. It felt right. It felt chosen. They want me back, he asked. They want you, Mara corrected. But on your terms. Public philanthropy. Cultural investment. Literacy programs. She gestured around the shop. Places like this. Elara's breath caught just slightly. Mara reached into her bag and placed a slim folder on the counter. You don't have to answer now. Or ever. But if you do, she smiled at Elara. This little bookstore becomes the heart of something much bigger, without losing what makes it magic. Silence settled, not heavy, but expectant. Elara squeezed Adrian's hand. Well, she said softly, eyes bright. That's one plot twist I didn't see coming. Adrian looked around the shop, the creaky floors, the penciled notes in margins, the woman he loved standing exactly where she belonged, and froze. Elara, he said slowly, wonder and surprise tangling in his voice, you're already part of this. She frowned, stepping closer. What do you mean? Adrian turned the page toward her, and her name stared back at them, printed neatly at the top. Elara stared at the page as if it might rearrange itself out of courtesy. It didn't. My name, she whispered. Why is my name there? Mara's expression softened. Because long before Adrian walked into your bookstore, people were paying attention to what you were doing. Quietly, consistently, changing lives one recommendation at a time. Elara let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, half disbelief, half awe. I just sell books. You build readers, Mara said gently. And readers build worlds. Adrian watched Elara's face shift as understanding bloomed. Not fear, not pressure, but recognition. The kind that feels like remembering something you didn't know you'd forgotten about yourself. They want you to lead it, Adrian said, voice warm with pride. The foundation, the vision. I'd support it, but only if you wanted it. Elara looked at him, then really looked. Not the billionaire, not the man who turned away from power, but the one who chose a bench by the river and warm bread and a life that fit. And what would you do? She asked softly. He smiled. Exactly this. Just bigger shelves. She laughed, the sound filling the shop like sunlight. Then she reached out and closed the folder. I don't need titles, Elara said. But I believe in stories finding the people who need them. If we can do that together, without losing mornings like these, then yes. Mara nodded once, satisfied. Then it settled. She rose, already fading back into the world she belonged to. Congratulations, both of you. When the bell finally rang behind her, the bookstore felt warmer somehow, unchanged and utterly transformed all at once. Adrian slipped the ring fully into Elara's hand this time. No speeches, no stage. Just truth. So, he said, hopeful and certain all at once, will you build this story with me? Elara didn't answer right away. She glanced around the shop at the shelves, the light, the life she loved. Then she looked at him, eyes shining. Yes, she said, but only if we never stop choosing love first. He kissed her there between fiction and poetry, knowing, finally, that this was the greatest ending he could ever write. And somewhere, a new chapter quietly began.